Hey Fred, how's it going?
Hey, Anil, good, very good.
Do you know, for folks that don't know, Fred and we've got a history together. We were classmates back at LBS, London Business School, back in what, 2006?
Mm-hmm.
Man, time has flown by.
Yeah, yeah.
So I'm in London, as you guys know. Fred, whereabouts are you?
I'm in sunny Zurich, Switzerland.
Is it really sunny there today?
It is very
Hey,
nice.
I'm jealous. You know, what's funny is I look at the weather app that I've now added to my phone and it's like a gray tile because it's gray outside. And it's like, man, for once, technology does work.
Yeah.
Hey Fred, what are you doing these days in Zurich?
So I've been in Zurich for 8 years, and for the past year, I've been doing executive coaching and also teaching some meditation. That's a little bit more on the side.
Nice one, man.
Yeah.
What got you into that?
Well, 2 years ago, I realized I wanted to do something different with my career. A lot of things had changed in my life, and I would say for the better. Uh, but professionally, I was a little bit stuck, and I felt like I needed to do something different, but I didn't know what. And making that kind of shift was scary. So I got an executive coach, and I found the process just amazing. And I realized that that's what I wanted to do. So my coach became my mentor, and I did the same training program he'd done, kind of tried to follow in his footsteps on that new path. So after 15 years in entrepreneurship, tech, and marketing, I changed to get into executive coaching.
That is interesting, mate. Because I remember when we were classmates, you were into remind me probably media, music. Because I mean, you're
Yeah, I had a startup in online
yeah,
video editing.
yeah. Tell. I mean, it's kind of interesting, mate. You go from you say you want things with meaning, and you had a passion that you did, and you shift gears, and you went into adding value, meaning by coaching. What was there like a kind of a moment where you're like, this isn't right for me, or what was the tipping point?
Uh, I don't think there was a particular moment, but there were a few things that happened. I think having children and moving to Switzerland changed my priorities. So before that, I had been very interested in marketing at a certain level in terms of customers and targets and campaigns and all those kind of marketing activities that I found intellectually stimulating and kind of worth going after. And then after a while, I think the best way to describe it is that I felt full, and then someone tells you to eat, and you just don't have appetite for it. You feel full. I feel like I already eaten. You can eat a little bit more, but then at some point it's just stop. So I don't know, that could be related to like a burnout, or it could be just a lack of meaning, or something in that terrain that dawned on me. And then I started trying a couple of things, to change it up a little bit, but without really thinking about it enough. And so the executive coaching, that's really when I invested in making a more conscious change into something that I actually thought about and, felt that kind of renewed conviction.
Awesome. Do you know? And it's funny. Me starting up my podcast 6 months ago. You doing what you've been doing for now. So for how long have you been doing coaching for?
It is exactly a year.
Nice. Well, happy anniversary.
Yeah, thank you.
Right. That's awesome. It's actually what kind of got us back in touch. Because I
Mm.
mean, funny enough, like Fred and we would bump into each other and have chats at the school pub that was right next door, the Windsor. And we have chats. But like, I think what's amazing is during lockdown, during this crazy year, like an absolute amazing friendship has started to bloom between Fred and And I'm actually grateful that you're back in my life, mate. And
Mm.
we've had some amazing conversations in the last couple months, and we kind of said today, all right, let's give it a go and kind of take a topic that we've chatted about formally and informally, and just kind of see kind of where it can go. And
Yeah.
yeah, so I think so.
Mm.
It's a bit of a wild card, but I'm excited, man.
Yeah, yeah, very cool. Just to come back to the story and what's happened over the last few years, I just wanted to point out as well that it's funny how it happens in life. Like you're one of those people that I always really liked your energy and your vibe, but we just never became close friends when we studied. But you kind of. I don't know how to think about it, but like you're on my list of like someone I'd like to be friends with, but
Awesome,
it
man.
just didn't happen.
It
Uh,
didn't. And sorry, not to interrupt you, but we did. I randomly did a triathlon in Zurich
yes, that's right.
back in 2014. I was
Yeah,
like, "Who's in Zurich that I know?" And you were like, "Yo, I'm
yeah,
here,
yeah.
man. Let's get together for a meal."
Exactly. So that was possible. And then, with my professional change and so on, I'm very interested in personal development. And then when you started, you started the podcast, and it was lockdown,
Yeah.
and that was a perfect time to like reach out to people, and that felt like, you know, the sign that I need to find out more about Anil and his podcast, and you know what's kind of been going on behind that whole initiative. And yeah, that's exactly how it worked out.
And the few chats that we've had since that, you've actually calmed me quite a bit, mate. I think we did a breathing exercise once, which was
Yep.
amazing. And I think what's been cool is we've just had these fluid chats on various topics that honestly got me. They've opened my eyes. And you know, one thing we're part of is well, the acronym is CPM, Creative Personal Mastery. We've gotten back together with some old cohorts, some old classmates on WhatsApp, and we've had, I think, 2 chats now. And you know, it's just on the back of having chats with Fred one-to-one, I'm like, yeah, I love that. I kind of want to keep that going. So Fred, I'm glad that that friendship that we've wanted, because we've got a similar background that like, and I didn't realize this about you, Fred, that, you know, you're part Indian, mate. Like,
Yeah.
part Swedish, part Indian. I was like, you know, it's like, man, don't judge a book by its cover, man. And you've always been very friendly and very open to chat and conversations and new ideas. And I love that about you.
Yeah, we've
So
had great conversations recently. This is something
we
very
have.
special, something I cherish.
Likewise, man. And so that's why, you know, we thought we'd take a topic that Fred and I have briefly chatted about last week. And, you know, rather than kind of overly scripted, we just said, let's put it down and let's see how it goes. So Fred, let's take the topic about books. So as you can see behind me, I've got my bookshelf, and that's only half of it.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be honest that probably half of those books are business related and half of them are productivity, personal development. I want to improve and change my life, self-help books. And I think you've had a sentiment on that when we chatted about, can you have a read too many books? What are your thoughts?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So I like that you started with the bookshelf. So have you read all of those books?
So blunt, no. I think I have read most, if maybe more than anything else. I've like skimmed half of them.
Yeah.
The books, and I probably get to halfway point for most.
Yeah. Cool. And it's like comes from recommendations, or you see something, you hear about something on a podcast, you buy the book. Sometimes we read it, sometimes we don't, right?
Exactly. Like, you know, I think a couple of them are on productivity. 2 of them are Covey books. So the 7 Habits and the 8th Habit. Two books on emotional intelligence. I've got a book on retail, a couple books on retail. So I've been curious about certain things. And also I've asked folks and they've recommended, hey, you should. So yeah, it's mostly been through recommendations. But there are a few that actually sit on my iPad, you know, Eat the Frog and, you know, What Got You Here Won't Get You There, you know, those, yeah.
I think those books, they have great titles. I mean, they're so evocative and kind of self-explanatory. They really take you there. And I think that's part of their success, at least. That you're like, yeah, you can see what you're going to get. And you're onto this theme of like, I need to be eating these frogs, you know, it's something that people can really identify with. And then the question is, you know, does it have the desired change in your life, right?
So
have they?
Some have and some haven't. I think what I found is a couple of them kind of say the same thing in different ways. One book that I've read recently or did the Audible is Atomic Habits. And, you know, out of the entire book, if I had to be honest, there's one thing I took away from the 300-400 pages, which is just start with 2 minutes per habit. Like, don't try to like start something brand new and do it for an hour. You'll end up either hating it or you'll think you've done it. But to be honest with you, mate, like I can't say every book has changed my life. You know, a couple of books on productivity, to-do lists, you know, mark things that are super important as A, B, C, or Covey. Hey, have things you need to action, things you need to follow up on, things you need to watch. And I think where I've kind of found myself is, okay, I'll take a few bits because that's my style. I'm not someone who just takes someone's framework and just does it consistently.
Sure. Yeah.
I try to take bits and pieces, which has its good and bad. One good is I'm at least learning a different way of doing things. But the bad is it's almost like a bit of a Frankenstein effect. You're almost kind of piecing together different body parts, hoping that at some point it'll be fluid. But yeah,
And I think that part can be done more or less well. The kind of thing that I've seen is, people read a lot of books and they like kind of quoting books. If you say something, oh yeah, that's like in that book,
Mhm.
and I think then I get the feeling it takes it out of their own experience, and rather than saying like, oh, I agree with that, that makes sense, they say, yeah, I read that in a book, which for me is like a lower form of insight than if you say like, hey, I really get what you're saying, that really resonates with me, or I feel that, or I'm going to try that. That's good enough. We're two people having a conversation, and if an idea resonates, you do it. The validation from a book there, to me, it doesn't add that much. So when you have these, like you mentioned, the Frankenstein. So, and I think it makes total sense that you have these kind of frameworks in life, and you have some idea about how to achieve balance. You have some idea about how to stay productive, and it, of course, it does make sense to incorporate and really integrate new ideas. But then the balance becomes very skewed towards acquiring new ideas and talking about new ideas and updating. And one day it's Atomic Habits, the next day it's 7 Habits, and then you don't actually even give those ideas the opportunity to impact your life as much as they could. So the example I like is, if you're going to learn to play golf, and you say you have 3 hours a week to do it.
Mhm.
If someone spends those 3 hours reading different golf books, you say like, well, maybe pick up a club, get out on the driving range,
Exactly.
get a trainer, and start playing golf, and then you maybe play, I don't know, 2.5 hours, and then read for half an hour, something like that. That's, I think, the mix between practice and reading. And with these habits, I think it's similar, that we do need some good ideas, and it's great. We talk to people and we read books, but that can get in the way of the change. And it can even become an excuse. Like we feel like we're ticking boxes or we're doing something, and just like reading 10 books on productivity, or, uh, maybe you should just look at what's actually happening, make a change, see how it feels, you know, try things out. How does it work to get into a habit? How does it work to add a new practice into your day? That's a very intuitive, very simple process. And then I think you find you come up with a lot of these ideas yourself, right?
No, I agree. I think I'm gonna go work backwards because you've shared a couple things that have kind of struck a chord in me. I think let's just start with first one with like the example of a golf book, right? It's like, hey, okay, you want to learn to play golf. You probably want to read a bio of someone who to be inspired.
Mm.
But you're right. Why is it you think people feel they can read a book, whether it be about golf or even productivity, to kind of learn a new habit or a new hobby or practice, whatever you want to call it, versus just kind of going out and just picking up the club and doing it? Why is it that a book is safer than
Yeah,
the
yeah.
activity itself? What's about that?
That's the word that came to my mind, that it's safer.
Hmm.
Um, that it's, practice and change, actually doing that work is hard. And I think we all like reading a book, and it has a lot of like status for ourselves and maybe with other people as well. That, oh, I'm reading all this books, and have you read this? Oh, you haven't read it. I've read it, and it's great. And I get to, talk about it, and I get to fill my bookshelf. And it can be, I mean, it's very rewarding. It's intellectually stimulating. I think many of us are kind of ideas people. We like those ideas. We think, oh, that's genius. I'm going to do that. But then the second half, or the other side of it, that it's kind of hard and it's kind of messy. And do these ideas translate into my life? And like you're saying before about integration, does it actually kind of reconcile with all the other stuff I'm doing, or is it actually a little bit more complicated than that? So when the rubber hits the road, it gets messy and complicated. And I think the final thing I wanted to say about that is, that um, we, we pick up these ideas from the books,
Hmm.
and with something like golf, you can see the progress. So it becomes clear that if you play, you get better, and if
Hmm.
you don't get better. But a lot of these productivity things and mental things like meditation and so on, it's difficult to see the progress.
Hmm.
So it's not so clear that we are making more progress, and I'd argue, by adding a practice as opposed to reading another book.
I love that. I think that's powerful right there. Just how do you see the progress? So it's like, do you see progress by the number of books on your bookshelf? Do you
Mm-hmm.
see progress by the number of pages that you've read? The progress based on, oh yeah, I've read that, or let me quote you something that I read in this book.
Mm-hmm.
I don't do it myself. I can quote it.
Yeah, yeah,
Or is it the progress is measured by I've actually gone and done it. I've implemented it. It
yeah,
works for
yeah.
me. It doesn't work for me. And it's interesting. I think how people measure progress obviously varies.
Mm-hmm.
And is it a really, it's funny. I think like these are called self-help books. Are they really self-help books? Or are they kind of almost like a badge of honor? Like I have read
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
blank.
Yeah, yeah.
It's I mean,
You see a lot of that, and then there are like a few superficial attributes, and you know what you said about measuring made me think about, wouldn't it be like we talk to the people around us and we see how in the grand scheme of things, if we're kind of a good person to be around, if we're doing what we said we're going to do, you know, the people around us at work, they can judge our productivity. People can, I think, to a large extent as well, judge our kind of happiness and how we seem to be doing. And I think that's something we can do ourselves as well, to check in with ourselves, and to maybe, you know, with journaling. So I'm a big believer in meditation and journaling, and I think those two practices are very complementary. Um, to then, you know, look back and say, oh, at this point, you know, I was struggling with something, one part of my life, and then I actually sorted that out. How did I do that? What worked? What didn't? You know, how did I make those changes?
I'm with you. Take me for example. So if you were my coach and we were and I said to you, "Hey, coach, guess what? I read 3 books in the last month about
Mm-hmm.
meditation."
Mm.
What light would go on, or what would be like the hang on a second, like what would be the maybe your follow up?
Yeah, yeah. I'm about like new perspectives and ideas and commitment to change.
Hmm.
So, you know, the ideas need to come up from somewhere. So it's interesting to have a conversation about it, like, oh, well, what did you learn from those books?
Right.
It kind of get you in that space, and you tell me about what you learned and what you actually remember. And then the second part is, so what have you done with it?
What's the action?
Yeah, yeah. Did you put, you know, did you put some of that into practice? How has something changed?
And I think I would have to be honest, man. I think so if I kind of think back to the few books I've read in the last couple months, mainly on Audible, I even have Ikigai, yeah, on my desk and on my table. And I think I read 2 chapters and I put it down. And I'll be honest with you, I think out of all the books I've read, I've probably put into practice maybe 2 or 3 things.
Mm-hmm.
I probably was the person who said, "Oh yeah, I'm reading that book," or "Oh yeah, well let me jot that down and I'll add
Yeah,
that to
yeah.
my recommended book list." So if I'm on a holiday, I can pick it up. And I think I'd be honest, yeah, I think that's probably what I'd say to you is, well, I read 3 books and I probably got one thing out of it, and
Mm-hmm.
I can say maybe I've shared it with someone, hoping
Mm-hmm.
that they might be able to use it, so I paid it
Yeah,
forward.
yeah.
But
It's nice.
but I kind of want to go a bit deeper on that. Like, so
Mm-hmm.
what is it that people, if a self-help book or if it, I mean, I know I'm maybe picking on self-help books more
Mm-hmm.
because I'm just in that camp.
Mm-hmm.
What is it? Why is that people feel that they need to read more of those? And why is they feel that, like, they don't, maybe they don't get to the point where they go, ooh, new idea or change. Like, and maybe I'm presuming that not
Yeah, yeah.
everyone
Mm-hmm.
gets to that. It's like half, 100 people read a self-help book, half make a change, half don't.
Yeah, yeah.
Whatever that split is, why is that? What is it about the human mind that we want that status, that badge of honor, as opposed to that real change?
Mm-hmm. That's a good question, and I think it comes back to this thing that like everyone can look inside and figure that out for themselves, if this is true for them or not, if they kind of fall into this trap. And I do think it's a trap sometimes. I think it is easy to read. I think it has the social status. I think we like ideas. Uh, this kind of insight came about from me when I thought, how many times have I thought, I'm never going to forget this?
Mhm.
You know, something happened, I learned something, and I thought, wow, this is a life-changing insight. I'm never going to forget this.
Mhm.
And how many of those insights can I actually remember now? And I realized I was remembering a lot of shit. Like every time I did something embarrassing high school, I could like rattle those off for you, a few of them. Uh, Whereas like these amazing moments and life-changing insights that I thought I was going to bring with me, those I've forgotten. And you know, that's a kind of a little bit of an evolutionary trick, I think. So we have to work harder to bring these insights with us. And we're very focused on ideas. We like ideas. We like sharing ideas. You know, this is an intellectual satisfaction to it. I mean, we do read for pleasure, something wonderful. But if we are talking about change, if we are talking about that kind of feeling of this is an insight I want to bring into my life, this has the potential to change my life, then you have to put it into action.
I love that. And just out of curiosity, Fred, have you, whenever you've had conversations with your clients, has this ever come up? Have you ever had to kind of nurture that, or kind of almost just be blunt and go, "Yo, that's great. You've read three
Mm.
books, but what change are you making on the back of it?" Have you ever had to have that chat?
That's a good question. Um, and I think it's something, you know, that I have to think about as a coach, to what extent I, you know, challenge or contradict or pick up on, you know, I would have to judge somehow that my insight or my challenge is correct and kind of worthy to take that change of direction in the conversation. Um, I do often get the feeling, if we talk about something and an insight comes up, and people get a lot of comfort from hanging it onto a book, as opposed to saying that it's just true to them. Like
Mhm.
they feel a conviction, they want to try something. For me, I think that's all you need. Then the book, it doesn't add very much. You know, it's like it's like a bibliography. We want to, you know, kind of footnote the way we talk with scientific references or something like that. And
Yeah.
and I think that that's a detour. So probably I would be unlikely to challenge it specifically, but just like turn it into more of an action bias. Like with these books, you know, you said you read 3 books on meditation or something like that. So how could you get more out of them? It brings up the idea of like, is it even worth perhaps rereading some of the best books that you
Mhm.
read? Something great you read 10 years ago that actually did have an impact on your life. Rather than reading a new book, maybe reread that. Or just look at something and say, okay, I read it, it was interesting. What can I change?
No, I mean, I love it, because I think what's because even like if I were to say to you in a month I read three books of meditation, you'd probably be like, first off, why three books? Second off, why not just read that one of the best of them three times, as opposed to,
Could be, exactly,
you
yeah.
know, but you're right. I think it's one of the podcasts I listen to is by John Maxwell, and I was running one day and he's like, one of his podcasts, "Oh guys, I've just read Atomic Habits. And if you look at this book," and the guy he's with, he's describing the book. It's got tabs in it. It's got notes in it. And the guy scribbled it up. And,
Mm.
and I was thinking as I was running, I was like, okay, I know I took notes as I was listening to the Audible. I'm like, okay, I'm jotting things down, but listening to Maxwell say, I picked this up and picked this up. And I'm like,
Yeah.
wow, I just picked up the whole 2 minute thing. And this guy's got,
Yeah.
so it's funny how,
Yeah.
and he even said, he's like, guys, exactly as you said, if you're not reading the book and making notes and like actually going, what am I taking out of this?
Yes. Hmm.
There's a guy I know, not directly, but indirectly, who apparently would make a PowerPoint slide or a flashcard for every book he's read. And he makes almost his own Blinkist, right?
Yeah,
15
yeah.
minutes to try to refresh. And I'm like, there's probably one of him for every 20, 30 people who read a book for that badge, for
For
that
sure. Yeah, yeah.
conversation.
Mm.
And it's funny, man. I'm just going to go back to your other point too. Like, you reading for pleasure. It's funny, man. Like like I said, if I look at my bookshelf, 3 books on productivity, it's like, man, are you really reading books on productivity and to-do lists for pleasure? Because if you are, we really have to, like, maybe it's not a
Yeah,
conversation around,
we should
number of
talk
books
about
you
that.
read. It's like, yeah,
Yeah.
what really do you get pleasure out of? So,
Mm.
no, but I just maybe want to go back to, so kind of if I understand you right, what you're kind of saying is, hey, when it comes to like these self-help, productivity,
Mm.
spiritual books, maybe it's quality over quantity, and it's more
Yeah.
the one or two changes you make based on what you've learned and you put into practice. Um, or it's just a matter of, if it's a, instead of learning the theory, just go out and pick up the club, pick up
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
basketball, pick
Exactly.
up a baseball bat and just
Yeah.
swing.
Yeah. I think that's a great summary of those points. And I just point out with meditation specifically is one of these things that I feel strongly about, and it's a great example because it's a bit like going to the gym. You're training something, but no one can see what you're training directly.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the problem with the immaterial things, right? It's like your muscles aren't getting visibly bigger. So again, it's tempting to read books and you learn concepts. And I talk to a lot of people about meditation, and they start rattling off concepts and names of things. And then it's clear that meditation is a kind of practice where you get some profound insights through the practice. And then you don't have to be convinced by someone else
Mm-hmm.
how how thoughts look, what
Mm-hmm.
is actually a thought. And if you ask someone, they might say, well, a thought is our way of conceptualizing an idea, and something like that, abstract. And then if you actually look at it, someone might say, well, a thought is like a little sentence, a little piece of language that seems to come like from some fountain. It comes out of nowhere, and it's there, almost like a sound, and then it actually goes away. Like
Mm-hmm.
I think that's actually what a thought looks like. So you can have that direct experience and observe a thought. And then, that's something very different. And it comes with practice. You just look for yourself. And I find that incredibly powerful.
No, mate, it is. I mean, a simple thought. And for me, it's almost like, I hope that thought, as simple as it maybe, may not disappear, but it, like you said, it lingers and it resonates, and it's like almost like a seed. It's
Mm.
a tiny little thing that plants itself and, you
Yeah,
know,
yeah. Mm-hmm.
blossoms in you, and
Mm.
stands for something. It means something.
Mm-hmm.
And I also want to kind of caveat this conversation with, like, again, as someone who has a lot of self-help or productivity or whatever books, I there are a couple of things I'm taking away from it, but the one thing is, I don't want to discredit people who pick up books like Barbarians at the Gate, or books on diplomacy or negotiation, or, like, let's
Mm-hmm.
say, like, study topics where, yes, there's heavy content that people are wanting to take and learn. I mean, a buddy of mine, he works for a consultancy, and he started up a particular practice, and I saw his collection of books
Mm.
on that topic. And I'm like, mate, did you go through all these books? He's like, yeah, I did. I
Yeah,
actually
yeah.
wanted to make sure that I knew what I was talking about, because I'm going to be speaking to some pretty brilliant people. And if you're going to make the best, you need to read the best. So,
Absolutely. Yeah,
right,
yeah.
so that's definitely, but I think
Mm.
that's that
Yeah, yeah.
one person
Yeah.
or two versus maybe the rest of us who
Yeah,
just need to
yeah.
go, hey, why am I reading this book?
Mm.
Like, am I reading
Yeah, yeah.
to,
Mm-hmm.
for that badge of honor? Or, am I asking my question, what will I do with it after I've
Yeah,
read it?
yeah.
What am I
And,
going to
and
put in
and I think
practice?
you make a great distinction there. Like we talked about reading for pleasure. That's wonderful. And it gives you ideas and some
Mhm.
insight into humanity and things like that. And it's relaxing and all those things are wonderful. And then you're talking about like researching a topic for content, becoming knowledgeable in a certain area and acquiring knowledge there to be able to write a paper on it or to interview people in that area. That makes a lot of sense, to be well prepared. Uh, and so if someone has that purpose, that makes total sense. There's no argument there. So saying people should read less, it's a little bit provocative to get people thinking, but I do think it applies to quite a few areas. As you say, if maybe the purpose is not clear, or if reading more and more books becomes a little bit an excuse for or gets in the way of the actual change, because productivity, self-help, meditation, the purpose would be to change something in our lives.
Mhm.
I say, I want to be more productive. That's why I'm reading a book on productivity. Great. Then make sure you get the most out of it. Use the tabs, the notes, Check if anyone you know is reading the same book to talk about it.
Mhm.
Really, really milk it as those examples you mentioned. Get the most out of it. See how you're going to implement those changes. Try something for a month. Try something else for another month. Then experiment. See how it integrates with your other frameworks. Then I think it makes a lot of sense. But the temptation there, and I think the trap that we want to avoid, is to read one productivity book and then go directly to the next one.
I agree. Been there, done that. I think I've got a sharpened sense of to-do list until the next best book comes out, the next best way to do it.
Hmm.
Just a closing thought from my side, and then I'll hand it back to you, Fred. Um, when I started getting into audibles, which I have in the last 12 months, a fear I had is, oh, now suddenly I'm buying these audibles. I'm not going to have the physical book on my shelf. So when people come and see, oh, you're quite a well-read individual,
Mm.
and I'm going to lose that, and suddenly
Yeah, yeah,
I'm like, but that meant less to me. And like, it's also one less piece of furniture in your cluttered flat. Right. So,
yeah, yeah.
and then the second thought is which books do I want to do audibles with? And so I've actually found that the self-help books that I have read, so The Art of Happiness, highly, highly recommend that to folks, um, is a book that I would read repeatedly or listen to
Hmm.
repeatedly because I'd actually jot down notes as I'm listening to
Yeah,
it
yeah.
versus like Kite Runner is a book that my girlfriend's recommended I read. It's one of her favorites. I
Hmm.
bought it. I've not yet read it, but I also got the Audible, and I'll tell you, don't read and don't listen to an Audible for a narrative. Like definitely, if you can, pick up the book and read it.
Mm.
Definitely get more out of it. So for those of you that love Harry Potter, pick up Harry Potter. Don't listen to someone reading it into your ear. Just
Interesting.
not to end on a somewhat light note, but it's also
Well,
but
I could contradict you there as well.
ooh,
Maybe that's a
do
topic
it.
for another day.
Go for
Uh,
it.
in terms of, we humans being storytellers and story listeners,
Yeah.
that tradition is much longer than reading or writing. And I think that's something we really respect. But then all of a sudden, again, we put like this written thing on a pedestal. And I'm not sure. I love listening to stories. And you can close your eyes and this world emerges before your inner eye. You know, I don't know.
No, actually, it's fair because my struggle is
Mm.
when I was listening to Kite Runner, the first chapter, I was like, the guy's visualizing it for me, and I'm kind of like, versus what would it be like if I open the book and read it and
Yeah,
visualize it
yeah.
myself?
Mm.
But it's funny. It's like, yes,
Yeah,
man,
yeah,
I love
yeah,
that.
yeah,
I love that,
yeah.
Fred.
And
Okay,
again,
yeah,
it becomes so popular. People say, "Yeah, I retain much more when I read off the page." Maybe it's true. Maybe you can
yeah.
validate that. Maybe it's true. And if it's true for you, then that's fine. But we shouldn't just say these things. They kind of become cool to say, like the book is better than the movie, and all that kind of stuff. Uh,
Come on, man. Obviously, the book's always better than the movie. Come on,
always, right?
Fred.
Yeah,
Come on, give me a book. No, no.
yeah,
But
yeah, yeah.
but you're absolutely right. But I think that's where that's amazing though because you have the choice.
Yeah,
I think
yeah,
having the
exactly.
choice of both
Mm,
nowadays. But I think it goes back to your point.
mm,
Why? Like,
yeah,
if you're listening
exactly.
to it, are you listening to it because you're too busy to pick up a book, switch off digitally and read it?
Mm,
Or, is it because you truly do like to immerse yourself in the touch and feel of the book and you like it on your shelf more for you and having your library than
mm,
getting accolades from friends when they come into your house or your flat and they see your bookshelf and go, oh, you're so, it, know why. I think
yeah,
that's,
yeah,
yeah, and be real about it. Be authentic about it.
yeah,
Don't
yeah,
do it because
exactly.
someone else is telling you to do
Mm.
it. It's what's
Yeah,
best
yeah,
for you.
exactly. And I think that invites us into a very nice process of definitely like being curious and talking to people about books and getting input and recommendations. Then I also really like starting books and not finishing them. So I don't
Okay.
feel obliged to read them. That's something I've heard recommended as well. It resonated with me and it made me feel better about something I was already doing, which is just like read something. And again, it's a bit like eating. Sometimes I'm on a topic I thought I was interested in and I just don't have the appetite for it. So I just put it away. And sometimes it's happened like it's in my head what that was about. And then a year later, I pick it up and I read it quickly because then it's the right thing. I'm ready for it and I'm, devouring it and digesting it to stay with that analogy. And
Yeah.
it's something about like a natural appetite for different topics at different points in time. I have a ton of books that I haven't read, and I think that's okay. And they're like on different topics, and some of them I think like I'll probably come back to that topic, and then I have like 4 books I haven't read on, you know.
But it goes back to the why. Like, why am I reading it? It's
Yeah,
because
yeah.
relevant to me right now, or it's because somebody recommended it and there's something in it that
Mm-hmm.
that resonated that I want to understand further. And I think it's just about going away from that badge of honor, going away
Yeah,
from
yeah.
that,
Mm.
don't be
Yeah,
safe,
yeah.
immerse yourself in it,
Mm.
like, I genuinely, the reason why I love my to-do list is I once got shot by my old boss. She saw my to-do list being like literally a page,
Mm-hmm.
2, 3 columns. And she's like, Anil, what is wrong with you? Like, do you really need that many things on your to-do list? And now I'm to the point where I literally have 3 or 4 for one day. And
Yeah,
I'm like, that's it. And I've got
yeah,
a
yeah.
laundry list, but I can
Mm.
only do a few a day. And I'm not going to, I'm going to prioritize with a star. But do you know what I mean? Like, and it's
It
funny how
sounds
we
like a great
sometimes,
system, and it's yours, and it's
exactly,
evolving. Yeah, yeah.
exactly. And I don't need to read 5 or 6 books, but I am guilty. I have done that. And
Sure. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I think it's, again, just for those that are, again, who are watching, who are listening, it's like, there's just know why and make it
Mm.
real for you. And
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, well,
it's
feel like what you're talking about there for a while was like authentic motivations. To have like an authentic motivation to get into something and then really get into it. And as we touched on a couple of times, then to make the most of it,
mhm.
to milk it and to see how you can put things into practice. And, then these things are really going to matter and really going to make a difference.
And as you said earlier, give it meaning. It'll give you
Mm.
meaning, it'll give it meaning, and it'll stand for something. And hopefully, whether it's a new idea or an old idea that can bring about the change that you seek, thumbs up.
Wonderful. I think that was a great summary.
May, thank you, Fred. I absolutely love that. That was cool. I've just, and now I'm gonna look at donating a few books probably after this conversation, to the right people for the right reasons. But
Hmm.
hey, Fred, for those of you that are keen to connect with Fred, I'm going to share his details. I love this guy, and I know it's crazy to say, but the energy that we've shared and that we're going to continue to share in the conversations in the coming days and weeks, I'm looking forward to it, bud. Thanks for sharing this one with me today.
Me too. Thank you so much for today.
Catch you later, Fred.
Thank you.